Nearly 200 Venezuelan migrants who came to the U.S. are now back in their home country. They were being held at the American detention center at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Human rights activists say that the migrants were denied access to an attorney, but Venezuela's president, Nicolas Madurro, says that they've been rescued from U.S. custody.
Migrants deported from the U.S. have landed in Caracas. Their flight here took an unprecedented path for U.S. deportations. Venezuela's state airline picked up the deportees from Honduras after a U.S. government plane transferred them there from Guantanamo Bay, a choreographed operation that Venezuela's President Nicolas Madurro says came at the direct request of his government.
A direct petition from the Venezuelan to the U.S. government. Rescued from Guantanamo, the base which the U.S. has in Cuban territory. We've rescued 177 of our boys from there.
The transfer is the second U.S. deportation to Venezuela this month. The U.S. says some of the migrants sent back belonged to a Venezuelan gang, whose members became the primary target of Trump's immigration raids. Venezuela denies the allegations.
We checked the first group that were said to be from the Tren de Aragua gang. There was no one from it, not one. We'll check each person's legal situation.
After undergoing a health check, those who are not facing other criminal charges in Venezuela will be free to go home.
All right, for more now, I'm joined from the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, by Phil Gunson. He's a senior analyst with the Crisis Group, specializes in Latin America. Phil, it's good to have you with us. It looks like Venezuela and the United States cooperated here. Is that the case? Do we know?
Yes, this stems from a really remarkable meeting that took place just days after Donald Trump was inaugurated between his special envoy and President Madurro, in which Madurro agreed to accept deportees from the United States and handed over some U.S. hostages. And this is a new departure under Donald Trump's first government. Back in 2019, U.S. and Venezuela broke relations. There's no U.S. embassy here. There was a maximum pressure policy against Maduro aimed at ousting him and restoring democracy. But Donald Trump now appears to be taking a much more transactional approach. And as far as we know, despite the rhetoric coming out of Washington, which still says that, Maduro is not a democratic president, for now at least, Maduro is safe from a rerun of what Donald Trump did in his first term of office.
Yeah, it's interesting how things can change in a short amount of time. We know that the Trump administration says that many of the deported Venezuelans were members of drug cartels. Do we know what happens to these people now?
Well, that's a highly controversial claim. The Venezuelans in the United States, of whom there are hundreds of thousands, many of them under temporary protection because of the conditions in Venezuela. This protection is now being lifted. It's going to be suspended starting in April, unless the courts have something to say about that. And the idea that these people, that the vast majority of Venezuelans are criminals, is completely false. I mean, these are people who are actually legally in the United States under this TPS system. The government here says that none of those who have been sent back so far, although some of them have mostly minor criminal records, none of them belong to the so-called Tren de Aragua, which incidentally is not a drug cartel as such. It's a criminal network that spread out across the region, including to the United States, as the Venezuelan diaspora swelled in recent years.
Mm-hmm. Phil, you know this region well. With that in mind, let me ask you about what we saw today. The White House National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, he said that the U.S. is going, and I'm quoting here, to unleash holy hell on drug cartels. So it's a longstanding plague that many U.S. governments have failed to rein in. And what, if anything, could the Trump administration do about these drug cartels?
Well, what they have done on paper is that they've designated half a dozen criminal organizations, mostly Mexican drug cartels, as terrorist organizations. Now, some in the administration, Elon Musk, for example, say that this opens them to potential drone strikes and, for example, special forces operations in foreign territory, particularly in Mexico, where, of course, it's an extremely sensitive issue. Whether that will prove to be any more successful than any of the other policies that the US and its allies have, uh, have attempted against the drugs traffickers in recent decades remains to be seen. But what it certainly will do is alienate Mexico if the United States tries. I don't think it's going to be the case in Venezuela, incidentally, but the most likely thing is that they might try something like this in Mexico, and that, of course, would be a significant blow to Mexican sovereignty, and the Mexican government would no doubt have something to say about that.
Phil Gunson with the Crisis Group. Phil, we appreciate your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.